Usually the opposite of dark is light. When Netflix and Tim Burton's first season of Wednesday aired in 2022, we were reminded that it can also be color. Rainbows, yes. And blurple, certainly. But in the case of Wednesday's roommate and initial immediate adversary, Enid Sinclair, pink. Lots and lots of pink. They become best friends through dogged determination and stubborn circumstance, but they're set up as polar opposites right from the beginning, and it works. They're two sides of the same tarnished doubloon. They both have issues with their respective mothers to overcome, which is relatable. My mother and I butted heads for decades over the fact that I wanted to wear black and she wanted me to wear, wait for it, pink. Basically, if it was a pastel, Mum was itching to get me to wear it, but pink most particularly. Amazing how sometimes things come around full circle. You'd never know it from the way I dress for the camera, but I love me a wardrobe full of black clothing. And how better to show my love for the strange and mysterious than by cosplaying... No, not really cosplaying. Historybounding? Kinda. Wednesday Addams. But to get the top right, I need to make a mock-up. And serendipity in the form of the clearance section of Fabricland has provided a lovely Pepto-Bismol pink polylinen. So I give you the Enid Project, an offshoot of the Wednesday Project. Or maybe just the other side of the coin. Let's get started. Remember the Edwardian countryside blouse I made back in August 2023? I'm using that same blouse as the basis for this dress. I'm doing the same thing I did to my 1860s Garibaldi blouse back in September 2022, shortening it to below the bust and adding a skirt. I had to reprint and tape together the pattern though because the original has gone off on its own adventure. And if that's not a good reason to purchase and back up PDF patterns, I don't know what is. I figured out which pieces will need to be altered and traced them onto some tissue. The original blouse is acting as my mock-up for the mock-up. One thing I noticed when trying it on recently is the shoulder is way off on this pattern. Ideally, the puff of the sleeve would hit at the actual shoulder, not 2 inches down the arm. I've never had to do a shoulder adjustment before. I know I saw Mum do alterations plenty of times in the past, but my mind absolutely blanked. And I was in a bit of a panic until my friend Claude reminded me that I can just pinch out the excess where the shoulder darts would have been and redraft my pattern piece. That the yoke over the shoulder is the perfect place to have this problem, and it shouldn't affect the fit of the bodice or the arm. She even pointed me to one of her videos where she shows the whole process, so if you've been having fit issues too, well, now you know where to go. Funnily enough, the pinch out pretty well followed a line I'd drawn in previously as a guesstimate, so that's pretty cool. Because the back has gathers at both the bottom of the yoke as well as the waist, I'm transferring my gathering markings and will measure across the gathered space at that point in the back on my finished blouse. I'll gather down to that measurement, and when we add the skirt, which will have gathers of its own, I'm going to add a little mock waistband to contain the gathered ends. One other thing, I don't have huge hands or particularly wide wrists, but I often find the cuffs on these patterns are a little tight once you get the buttons done up. There are also 2 different cuffs, a slimmer cuff to go around your forearm if you choose the shorter sleeve, or a tall cuff if you choose the long sleeve. The last time I made this pattern, I used the shorter sleeve. This time I wanted the longer sleeve, but I didn't want the tall cuff. I'm not a fan of Victorian gauntlet cuffs. I don't like a lot of tightness on my arms. If it's a knit fabric, I don't mind so much, but woven fabrics just make me feel like I'm wearing the wrong size, which is uncomfortable at best and subtly mortifying at worst. I drafted a shorter, wider cuff. I also lengthened the sleeve to match the loss of length in the tall cuff, but realized when I went to cut things out that the sleeve was long enough just on its own. so there's a little bit less poof at the top of the cuff, and I'm okay with that. I started with the sleeve placket because it's the most challenging part of the whole shirt. There are fairly good written instructions on how to put these together, but I found looking up a placket tutorial on YouTube was really helpful. After that, I started on the front chest placket. I didn't add the buttonholes quite yet. Because this is going to be a cross between a shirt and a baby doll dress, I figured I'd be tacking down the placket partway up the chest. So I held off on buttonholes until I had a better idea of the area I'd be working with. I'd really like to thank my patrons, without whom this and other projects would not be possible. Your support helps pay for fabric and patterns, and we'll be seeing more of these acquisitions in upcoming videos. If you too would like to join my Patreon, there's a link in the description of this video. When I'm on long projects like these, I do try to check in irregularly with my people so they know I'm still getting things done. That said, your views help fund this channel, and if you've been enjoying this video, why not check out one of my other projects, or consider subscribing. Maybe boop the like button. This is just a little reminder to maybe set a timer or keep an eye on the time instead of zoning out working on a sewing project, which is exactly what I did last night because I'm actually having fun working on this dress, which is kind of funny because the first time around working on the blouse, I had nothing but grief. And I think part of the reason why this is working so much smoother is because I did those darn plackets on the sleeves first, got them out of the way, and I'm a little more familiar with the pattern. Anyhow, I came back downstairs last night after dinner with the thought of logging into the PC to play a video game, and after about 5 minutes I'd turned it off and just went right back to sewing. And then it was 3 a.m. and I'd sewn the collar on backwards. The seam is on the wrong side, and my hand stitching is flapping out there so that everybody can see it. Whoops. I also had to recut the collar, which is something I did off camera because it was far too large for the shirt, and I have absolutely no idea why. I'd say it's because I had altered the yoke, but I didn't go anywhere near the collar side of things, so color me baffled. Anyhow, time to settle in with something to watch while I rip a few seams and get back into the groove. With the collar repaired, the bodice was ready for its side seams. These are basic French seams to minimize any raw edges. Then I gathered the bodice down to match the gathering at that point on the full blouse. While I was seaming things, I French seamed the sleeves, ran gathering stitches for the sleeve caps, and put them aside for later. Okay, so the kittens have been banished from the basement. All they want to do is be destructive, because they're kittens. They want to have all of the attention to themselves, and doing anything other than paying attention to them is verboten. Anyhow, I'm working on my skirt panels. I don't have the arms in the bodice yet, but that's coming. I want to get the skirt panels done so that I can move kind of seamlessly from the arms to the skirt. Anyhow, I need 2 of these panels. It's going to be 60 wide by 30 long. 30 is about the distance between my underbust and my knee. And what I'm doing is I'm just using a technique that people have probably seen on Bernadette Manor and Morgan Donner's channels, where you pull a few threads in order to get a nice straight line across the area that you're trying to cut. And that way you can just follow the line when you do the cutting. The problem is that this is a fairly fine weave. It's linen poly blend. And as a result, it takes a little bit more time and effort, which is why the cats can't be down here. It does give me a good excuse to sit on my butt and listen to YouTube videos with my glasses off, so I guess there is a trade-off there. But it is something that is going to take time. So this is one panel. I've got enough to get a second panel out of this, and there's going to be plenty of leftover. Maybe I'll be able to make something like not necessarily an undershirt, but a tank top, or use an old corset cover pattern or something to make something kind of nice that if I need to, I can wear it underneath the blouse, because this is actually kind of sheer. I didn't realize how sheer it was going to be when I tossed it into the wash, but yeah, apparently a lot of fuzz came off of it, and it's revealed a really nice, somewhat sheer fabric that I'm not sure would be decent if I just tossed it on over top of a bra. So I guess we'll have to see. But in the meantime, I'm going to go back to pulling little threads and cutting my panels. And that way they will hopefully be of a certain size. And one of the other benefits, of course, is that when this is all gathered up, it should hang fairly straight. And that way I don't need to worry that anything will be slightly canted on the bias, pulling my skirts off kilter. So that's a number 1 in my books. Anyhow, I'm going to get back to it. I thread marked and cut out the waistband. It'll enclose both the gathers from the bodice as well as the skirt. The interior strip that isn't directly sewn to these pieces is turned in at the seam allowance and ironed so I can hand sew it in place. I also turned in and ironed the interior edge of the cuffs for the same reason. Sleeve time. Gathered the sleeve into the cuff and hand finished the inside. Gathered the sleeve cap and with a little trial and error, fitted into the arm side. To continue the gathering trend, I gathered the skirt panels, fit them to the waistband, and sewed that in place, tacking to the interior. When I tried it on, it was a bit long for my taste, so I cut it down off camera. If I hadn't, I wouldn't have been able to make the camisole in the last video. I've got a lot of hand finishing that needs to get done. I've got a hem that needs to be finished. I've got a collar. I think I've actually tacked down the collar, but I need to tack down the cuffs. I'm going to need to tack down the back of the waistband, and I need to do something about buttonholes and areas for collar studs. So we'll see what I get up to. Everything went together fairly easily, all things considered. I had a little difficulty figuring out what way to set the sleeves in, so I kind of winged it in the end. It seems to have worked out okay. I seem to recall that I had the same issue the first time I made the blouse, so I probably should have added extra notches on the pattern to keep it from being an issue in the future. Whoops. The shoulders worked out okay, possibly could take them up even further, so I'll keep that in mind. I'd been a bit worried that with the seam allowances I'd overestimated the amount to take out. Turns out I was okay. More than. I wasn't prepared for how sheer the fabric is, so I had to make a camisole to go underneath it. Thankfully, there was enough fabric left over after cutting out the pattern and trimming down the skirt to do this. If I make the pattern again, I'll be considering cutting out 2 sets of the front and back pieces as a lining. I say if I use this pattern again because I'm having to rearrange a few things in my schedule for a family event in the next month. So instead of going directly to the Wednesday portion of this project, I'm pushing it out a wee bit to make some much needed basics. I mean, it's already been pushed out by a writer's strike, so I don't see this as a huge problem. Might even give me a little bit more time to get that collar made properly, because that's something I don't want to get wrong. Is it really a Wednesday Addams homage if the collar isn't white and pointy? That was the whole reason for using this blouse as the base, by the way. The sleeve caps have that bit of Edwardian poof I've come to associate with Ms. Addams, and the fact that I could add darn near whatever collar I want to it. Don't let this little stubby casual collar fool you. You can bolt all kinds of collars onto it, which is why I haven't got a button on the collar. Just be patient, you'll see. But the fact remains that if I found another pattern that would suit better, I might use it. I may also be dipping into the fabric I was hoarding for the Wednesday dress, so I may be replacing that part of the stash, possibly with something a little more Wednesday. I'll explain when we get there. If you want to see the video for the camisole, it and my sewing playlist will be around here somewhere. Oh, hi. Hello. Most of my sewing experience seems to be actually keeping cats away from pins, because these little varmints really like to play with pins. Pins are their new favorite thing. Not so much you as your sister. Your sister will try to snag my pins and run away with them. She is a dangerous kitten.